Hello and welcome to Ycft. This is our first animated review of a new movie. Today we are talking about Insidious, the Red Door. Directed by Patrick Wilson in his directorial debut. Obviously having starred in the first two Insidious films, he kind of knows what he's doing. I kind of feel like we were in the minority with this film because we really liked it.
We really like this movie.
And I went on an emotional roller coaster.
Yes, we'll get into that, but this movie made me feel certain things. It made me react certain things as well.
She screamed.
I did.
This film's a sequel to Insidious Chapter 2 that was released back in 2013. So it's set 9 years later. So if you're going to go see this, you don't really need to see Chapter 3 or The Last Key. We're following the Lambert family again. Ty Simpkins, I've got his name right there, haven't I? It is Simpkins.
It's Ty Simpkins.
Who I didn't think was ever the best child actor, but he actually he is the lead of this film. I'd say this is his film. He has head billing. He actually has to do more acting in this one than in previous ones, and I was actually quite impressed with him. So it does follow on from the events of that film in which Josh and Dalton, so Patrick Wilson and Ty, have had their memories of the events of that year repressed. So they can't astral project anymore. They got no memories of the bride in black, the lipstick-faced demon, the fervor, Elise, anything. But that has had an effect on their life. And we are kind of starting to see the cracks in that metaphorical wall that's been put up starting to affect them now, and the ghosts from their past have come for them. I think that's pretty much the plot of this film, isn't it?
It is, yeah, totally.
So we're going to split this up a little bit into, we're going to talk about the cons, then the pros, and then a little bit of in the middle.
Yeah.
Because I think our cons list is actually quite short.
Yeah, they're few and far between.
So for cons, I think pacing is a bit of a problem with this film. I think the film is a bit slow in parts up until, say, the ending, which just kind of jumps on you. It just kind of happens, and then it's also, it's over. It's like, I felt like a whiplash. So a little bit of a pacing problem. I also think it suffers a little bit from sequelitis. We as the audience already know what Josh and Dalton are trying to remember. And they do switch it up a little bit, and they occasionally combat that with some interesting visuals and some cool sequences, but it can't stray away from that problem that we just already know what they need to know. Yeah.
And you said before that Dalton and Josh having their memories repressed inevitably has this effect on the family. It kind of is. It was destined to have an effect on the plot of the sequel as well. It's kind of it was a great way to end Insidious 2, but whatever sequel was going to follow on from Insidious 2 inevitably was going to have to pick up from that point. And no writer, no director can get past the fact that, their memories have been erased. And so it kind of is, I can forgive the movie for exploring this plot point, I guess, of the bulk of the film is Dalton and Josh trying to remember and having certain memories triggered. It is a little bit like they're playing catch up to something we already know, but at the same time, I can forgive it for a couple of reasons. One, because I do think the film is stellar. I enjoy the jump scares that we get. I enjoy the build up. I enjoy the characters. But also, you can't forget that this is where Insidious 2 left off. This is not necessarily a choice maybe they wanted to go in. It's kind of a choice they had to go in.
It's almost like you don't really need to have seen the first two movies.
In a way, yeah.
So I can understand why a lot of people would have gripes with that. And another con that I personally have with this, and I think a lot of people do, is there's a lot of sequences in the trailer that are just nowhere to be seen in the movie. Like the shot of lipstick-faced demon behind Dalton, where he's looking down on his dad. Absolutely nowhere. It's like, did they shoot a different ending, or was that just shot for the trailer? It feels like something was cut for whatever reason. And maybe that's why the ending feels so short.
Yeah, I agree with that. I also think because the lipstick-faced demon is, for all intents and purposes, Dalton's sort of personal nemesis, and he has been really since day one. Now that Dalton is a young man, I think Ty Simpkins is 21 in real life, so I don't know if... I can't do the maths quickly to figure out how old Dalton is supposed to be in the movie, but he's a young man anyway, regardless. Like, I was kind of expecting to see more of a sort of a physical showdown between Dalton and the lipstick faced demon. But yeah, I was expecting to see a little bit more of those two in whatever showdown,
Lipstick, he basically has about the same amount of screen time as he does in the original movie.
Yeah.
Which makes me think, did he need to be in the trailer? Really, or would have been cooler to reveal him in this. But he's basically, if you include the end of the second film where you hear the noise as a cameo, he has been in every movie.
He has, yeah. Whether he should be is a different question, but yeah, he has been.
My final kind of proper con is something that that Chapter 3 and The Last Key kind of add to as well is, we're now 5 films in, and the further still feels like a very small place. Like, they're only scratching the surface of the potential of the further.
Mm.
But every time we go there, we're kind of seeing a lot. Not like all the locations kind of change, which is always cool. But the fact that we've now seen the lipstick faced demon so many times. We had the Bride in Black for 3 movies. The Ghoul always popped up in the previous ones. Like, it feels like a very small place, and this would have been a good opportunity to explore that even more, but then it's like, we're seeing the further from college. That's in that they have announced a spin-off movie which will be new characters, so there'll be some new ghosts, new demons, and I think there is a really good chance then to course correct, but that's kind of what this should have been.
So, pros. Patrick Wilson, bearing in mind that this is his first time directorial debut, I think
His first time directorial debut.
Yes. Yes, you know what I'm saying.
He directs like a first time director in which it's like directing with passion. He's trying his best, and in a lot of ways really does succeed, and he's some amazing visual flair, some great use of negative space.
I think he's great. I honestly was blown away by some of the stuff we were seeing. I mean, we get some really inventive aesthetics in the film as well. He does some really interesting stuff with the camera work, but one thing I do really like, and this was a big kind of win for me, is not a spoiler to say because it's in the trailer, but Dalton, he's an art student, and obviously he's going off to college. He's got into this prestigious class, and I like how that element is very firmly incorporated into the plot. It's again, I don't think it's a spoiler really to say that it's his artwork that kind of inadvertently triggers a lot of his memories. It kind of reawakens his subconscious. But I do like how that kind of it's ingrained within the story. There's actually a purpose to it. But I also really like that the art is utilized in an effective, in scary ways as well. And again, not going to go into spoilers, but there are some really cool sequences involving his paintings, involving his, when he's doing his charcoal drawing. So I really like that. As like an art geek, I personally got a big kick out of that stuff. Did
you get a big kick out of the opening credits? The opening credits are basically telling the story of the first 2 films through art. And it's really creative, it looks really cool, and also it's kind of want to do a bit of side note here. The end credits have a song by a band called Ghost, called Stay, which features Patrick Wilson, and it's amazing. It's enough for you to sit through. There is a very, I don't even want to call it post-credit scene, but there is like, there's something at the end, so you can stick around if you want to see that. But the song alone is kind of enough. It was enough to make me sit through the credits. It was really cool.
Absolutely, I really, really liked it. Yeah, there was a lot I really, really loved throughout the movie. I mean, we've got to talk about the scares, or what we can talk about the scares as well, because you saying earlier that the further in some ways feels like a bit of a small place. Considering the scope. Mm-hmm. Of what the further is. Like, yes, I agree with that. But one thing I do like with every Insidious movie is, whether it's a sequel, whether it's a prequel, we do get some other ghosts coming through. And even if it's just for a small time, we get to spend a bit of time with them. We find out a little bit of their backstory. And because it's the further, these are not happy ghosts at peace. These are ghosts that are tormented. It's purgatory.
Yeah, I still would have liked a bit more, and again the trailer hinted at more.
Yeah, but there's a couple, 2 sequences in particular in the film that really, really got me.
They address 2 of your biggest personal fears.
They do. Patrick Wilson didn't even realise it, but he basically just tapped into two huge weaknesses of mine. And oh god, yeah, they got me. But I do like the jump scares, and I've seen a lot of other quick reviews of people talking about the film and people saying how effective the jump scares are or not effective. One thing I do think Patrick Wilson does well is not so much the jump scares, but just the building of tension. And again, it kind of
this film is so atmospheric.
It really is. Like, this to me feels like an Insidious film, and that's another thing that I'm not hearing a lot of people actively talk about. Some people are saying the opposite. They feel like it doesn't feel like an Insidious movie, and there might be a particular reason for that. But he's always doing something interesting with the camera work, and if it's not necessarily a jump scare, there is something going on within the frame, within the shot that, you know, draws your attention.
Even if nothing's going on.
Even if nothing's going on, there's something going on.
Yeah.
And I really like that. He seems to me quite a playful director. And it's a strength, sorry, I was just going to say, because he's obviously spent so much time in this franchise, you know, he's picked up a thing or two. I
also think there's a lot of scenes, especially with Dalton, where you get a really interesting imagery of what kind of feels like the further bleeding into the real world. It's a mixture of what the characters don't know, what real and what isn't. I personally really liked Dalton's roommate. What was the name of the actress? It was Sinclair.
Sinclair Daniels. Yeah.
You said, like, after you saw her, the way she was introduced, you kind of know exactly what type of character is going to be. But I think she was a welcome addition. I think she kind of acts like the person that things can be explained to so the audience can see, even though we as the audience already know. But I quite liked the performance. I liked how she worked with Ty. And I think she was just a welcome addition. Yeah. There wasn't too much of her. She didn't get... She could have easily went into that realm of annoying. So
when we were first introduced to her, I was a little bit worried because I thought, oh god, all right, here we go. You know, we know exactly the kind of character she's written to be. She's the polar opposite of Dalton, who at the start of the movie is in quite this, you know, introspective, quiet, somber place mentally, and she's the polar opposite. And I was a little bit worried just in terms of the dynamic. Is she going to be a little bit too much? Is she going to bring a little bit too much levity, a little bit too much comedy to the story? But I grew to like her a lot, and I did grow to like their dynamic as well. So yeah, that worked for me. But it will be interesting to see more people see the film where they sort of sit with her character, because I do think she could be quite divisive for people. But yeah, it worked.
Well, we have a couple of like reoccurring characters. We see Elise in the trailer, and we see there's a couple of others there which fans of the franchise will be like, oh, that's cool. Maybe one might wanted to see a bit more. But one return both on camera and behind the camera. I don't. Where would you class the the composer? Technically, he's behind the camera.
Yeah.
So
sure.
Joseph Passara.
Yeah.
Has famously scored all of the Insidious films, and I think that really helps in making it feel like an Insidious film. But also, he plays the lipstick face demon. Again.
He does.
He played him in the original film.
The one and only.
He was also Bathsheba in The Conjuring.
Yes.
So having him return to the role, I am going to say I don't mind the redesign. Like you say, he looks a bit charcoaly.
He looks to me
less smooth.
Yeah, as soon as I said the word, he looks kind of charred, like almost charcoaly. It dawned on me the connection, obviously, with Dalton's artwork. So yeah. I don't know if that was a deliberate choice or not with Patrick Wilson, but the lack of the sort of stark redness that I think that's what I was saying. So I wanted. It's not a big deal for me.
For me, I would have preferred for the lipstick on his face to have been a bit more vibrant. I think considering how like dark a lot of the scenes are, it would have been nice. But saying that, I do actually quite like how it looks. I think he's good in the role. He always is, and his score is always incredible. So he was a welcomed return. So should we talk about a little bit of like the bits that are both have good and have a little bit. Meh.
Yeah.
For a father and son story, which basically what this is, means that Rose Byrne is basically not in the movie. And I missed her in it, but she also didn't really have a place in the story.
Yeah. I love Rose Byrne. I'm always happy to see Rose Byrne in anything, but I think for people who saw the trailer, you could maybe pick a few things up about the dynamics of the Lambert family. And that obviously has implications for, you know, how much characters can have certain screen time, and yeah, Rose Byrne is not in the movie that much, but if she was, I feel like she would very much be shoehorned in, because this is ultimately a father-son story.
It's in that Foster got to have a little bit more to do. You never had anything to do in the original films.
Foster's just that, he's the forgotten child. Like, no one, he's never had anything really
the daughter
to do.
has
He's
like
just
one
the other
scene.
brother.
The little sister.
What's she called? Callie?
Callie, yeah.
Callie, yeah. Just that one little scene. I don't think she has any dialogue, aside from maybe like one line. But yeah, Foster's in it. It's the original kid as well.
Yeah, that's what it is all of the originals. But for a father and son story, they spend the majority of the film apart. And their stories do kind of like go side by side, and usually when one affects one, something will happen to the other. But I would have liked for them to have spent a bit more time together.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand that, and I think that kind of goes back to the main sort of gripe that people are having is that these are two characters that are basically trying to figure out stuff that we already know, but they're not even doing it together, they're doing it separately. But at the same time, the plot of this story is that Dalton is off to college. He's not at home anymore. He's out there in the big wide world, and he's having to figure out a lot of this stuff himself. And I enjoyed the sort of on campus setting as well. I think it was done quite well. I as I say, I like the dynamic that he had with with Chris. So even though he is figuring out a few things and he's like a few steps behind us, what I'm seeing of him figuring out, and similarly what I'm seeing of Patrick Wilson and his sort of subplot figuring things out, I enjoyed. It was entertaining enough for me, like the two sort of separate storylines. And when they inevitably do coalesce, it worked. I liked it.
It's not perfect. It's far from perfect. It's got, obviously we've mentioned a fair few things that kind of don't really work, but I said overall, I really enjoyed it. I want to see it again. I easily place this above Chapter 3 and The Last Key. In fact, as a trilogy, 1, 2, and 5, I really like it. And it has that advantage, that added protection of we already know these characters, and it's like a welcome return. A lot of that development has already been done. We know, or like I said, both films' strength and detriment is we know exactly where these characters are and what happened to them the last time.
Yeah, and I think where in terms of where I sit with it, like a ranking, I don't think I can give you one at the minute, just because we literally just saw it last night. I'm still on a little bit of a high from it. I need to maybe watch it again and again and again, and before I'm kind of comfortable in terms of where I put it. But yeah, it's got the added bonus of this is a movie about the Lambert family, who we all have a lot of nostalgia for. We all really like them.
They're what make a lot, because bear in mind the first film had a tiny budget,
yeah, well,
so they tried to do a lot with a little, but the cast is what made that movie.
I think, again, I don't think this is a spoiler to say, but we mentioned earlier that a lot of other reviewers and critics are saying that this doesn't feel like an Insidious film. Not everyone is, but a lot of them are saying that. And I think that is largely because one famous character in particular is largely absent throughout the film.
Yeah.
This is the first time where this particular person is not actively present, aside from maybe the odd little moment. So that's inevitably having an effect on people, but as I say, just personally, what I was getting from the other characters was enough to kind of tide me over. And just in terms of atmosphere, in terms of
cinematography is really nice in parts as well.
Yeah, like this did feel like an Insidious film.
Yeah, and not the worst Insidious film.
No.
I said to you, I kind of came. I'm not going to say much about where this kind of fits in, because I think that's kind of a bit of a spoiler, but I found weird connections with the Butterfly Effect movie,
yeah.
with Josh's story in particular. And maybe in a future video I can go into it, but I think anyone's made that connection yet. But it was screaming at me in the film, like, you've seen this before. But it was very niche. It's a very niche reference. If I can't go into it without spoiling something.
Yeah.
But I think that's also to the film's strength.
Yeah. And I think we both agree, right, that there's actually not a bad film in the Insidious franchise. Yeah. There's weaker entries.
You know I really don't like The Last Key.
I know you don't like The Last Key. See, the thing is, I've never disliked that film, but I do agree
But I dislike Elise in that.
Oh, you do. You do. You kind of have a problem with Elise as a character.
I also think that Keyface. Is that what it's called? Keyface in that one?
I think it's Keyface, yeah.
He's so weak.
He is the weakest demon.
Following on from the man who can't breathe in the third one, which I think was really cool.
Oh, he's
But then you also following
well.
on from the Bride in Black, a lipstick face demon. Keyface is just lame.
I totally agree. I think he is the weakest one. He's very easily defeated. Spoilers, kind of, for Insidious: The Last Key.
And ultimately doesn't... I don't know. It was just... it's not a very memorable film.
I understand that, but there are also aspects to that, i.e. cinematography, aesthetic.
I do think Lynch has the most to do in that film.
Yeah, and she's also back to being depressed Elise.
I like depressed Elise.
Which is our personal preference. So anyway, I personally don't think that there's a bad entry in the franchise so far. There's certainly ones that are more, have the nostalgia, that are technically better filmed than others. But yeah, this is not last for me. By a mile.
No, and I'm still excited to see what they do next. We know they're doing something next. This only had a budget of, if I'm right, about 16 million, which it's the highest budget of an Insidious film so far, but that's still a tiny, tiny budget. So it's going to make money regardless.
It is.
I want to see it again. I'm actually kind of tempted to see it again in the cinema just because I want an emotional roller coaster with these characters again. And for me, the pros far outweigh the cons. Like I said, even if we're alone in that.
We may very well be, but I think we're going to stand by. I mean, look, opinions can change on a film.
We stood by Halloween Ends. We'll stand by this.
We will. And like I said, look, I literally screeched, and I haven't screeched in a horror movie, in a very, very long time.
Good crowd for it as well. It was
quite
good.
Yeah.
A crowd that was creeped and scared and a bit jumpy. That's what I like.
Yeah.
You have that really good horror. And it was busy as well. This was opening night here in the UK. So there was anticipation for it. People wanted to be there to see this. So I think it's going to do well.
Yeah. And kudos to Patrick Wilson.
Yeah, I cannot wait to see what he does next. And
I hope he stays in horror.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe even something in the Conjuring universe or another.
Maybe.
Thanks for stopping by, guys. We like this film.
We do.
Like I said, the pros far outweigh the cons. Go check it out while it's in the cinema. If you are a fan, I do think this is a film that... It's going to be good to watch at home, but I do think it benefits.
Yeah.
For me, a good jump scare works the best in the cinema. When you have the loud noises that are just going to shock your body.
Yeah.
Anyway, you want to see it with a good crowd, so go check it out while it's in the cinemas.
There's so much more I would really love to say. Obviously, this is a spoiler-free review, but I would love to properly dissect this movie and talk about certain scenes and characters.
I think at some point, after a while, maybe we can do a video where... Because we've done video on the first one, we've done a video on the second one. I'd like to do one where
concluding the Lambert.
Yeah, when we go over their whole story. At some point, do 3 and 4, maybe. We will see you on Thursday, guys, for our regularly scheduled programming.
Bye.